Come over here, nodules and nuts, start marking my rods. Go ahead and put them on the pistons. Do piston number 2. Make sure my bevel is the right direction for number 2. So set it up so this is like this. So if this is here, it tapers to the left-hand side. If it's on this side of the motor, if it's on this side of the motor, it's the same direction. It's towards the front because this is in front of the cylinder. And what we do is look for the bevel right here on the edge of it. So it goes the same direction on all the pistons, except for the ones on the passenger side say FWD, pointing the opposite direction. So this is going to be piston number 2. I'm down here on file fit my rings right now. I'm getting all my rings file fitted, get everything just fitted up, all the dirty work, and then I'll take it back, put it in the vat. I'll wash everything when the bearings come. I'll wash and clean everything up, put it on an engine stand. We'll get all the grease and grime and dirt out of it, and then we'll put it together. But it's important to go ahead and file fit your rings now, and then that way you can re-clean everything, and that way it ain't nothing's contaminated. So that's what we're gonna start with right now, is seeing what these ring gaps are. All right, guys, well, and here we're gonna put Ghost's new short block together. Don't be Jake, don't be that guy. But anyways, the way I like to do it, we got it out of the vat, we got it washed up, we blowed out all the cam journals, the main journals, all the oil passages, we blowed them all out, got all the water out of the contaminants. What I like to do, since this is machined, I like to go through and come through here, and before I take this apart, I like to put a little mark right here, because these things right here are very easy to move. So I always mark them with a nice little line on every corner, and that way when I put it back in, I can put it back in the exact spot that everything was machined. I mean, like, it can be over here, it don't matter, because it's just a location mark there. Because even though it's been machined right here with these caps in this spot. So this is where I would like it to be at when I put it back together. So I like to go through and just put a mark here, and that way I know when I go back together right exactly where I need it to locate for that main journal to be exactly in the spot it was machined already. So that's because once you loosen them bolts up, you can move that up a little bit, and it can affect the measurements. So that's what we like to do. All right, let me get the caps took off of it now. Now I got all the marks. We'll get the caps off, we'll get the bearings in it, and we'll start checking our bearing clearances to make sure we got the right oil clearances that we need. On an LS motor, I always like them to be a little bit looser. We run a high volume oil pump in it. We run a 10355 pump, which is the best pump ever made for an LS motor. But I like to go through and if they're loose, they're good. If they're tight, they're gonna blow up. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna check all our clearances. I've already gapped our rings. The other day I took them, got the rings and gapped them to each hole. Got the rods on it, so really this is gonna be an easy process. Pop the caps off, check our bearing clearances, and then start assembling it. Ride with us. All right, come here, I'll show you something. See how these can move? This is why we mark it, because when you tighten it down, that can shift in between it. It will not exactly, don't have like dials to locate it exactly to where it was. And this stuff, it can move around as you tighten it up. So that's why we go through and do it like we do. So let's get these caps off. And these are directional. So on LS motor, 1 through 4, it faces backwards, the hump. And number 5 is always facing this direction, because your cover, if you flip that around, it'll hit your rear seal cover. So all these 1, 2, 3, and 4 are always got the heel this direction towards the back of the motor. And then like I said, that one is always backwards. Let's get these caps out of it. They are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we can start going through putting the crankshaft. We can put the bearings in it and then set the crankshaft down in it. We have this right here, it's called plastic gauge. So this is just an easy way to measure. So 0.002 to 0.006. So this will be a good measurement for what we need, because like I said, we'll be more on the looser side with this. They make 001 to 003 or whatnot, but we don't want it down there that tight. So we're hoping that this right here, we can take this gauge here and we can measure it out, and it'll be somewhere probably right there around where that white one is on the width. This to here is where we want it. Anything wider than that is a no-go. It's gonna be too tight. Anything out here is a no-go because it's too loose, and you might have to get another set of bearings. So we've had the block machined, the crankshaft's been polished, so hopefully we'll wind up somewhere right here in this area. I wouldn't be mad if it was in this area. Like I said, between these two right here is where we want it. Very important to get that water from below the cap. That's where it was down in the studs when we screwed the cap loose. Cleaned out of there, because that can affect your reading. So here's the main bearings. On the main bearings, the upper set of bearings will always have the oil hole in it because it feeds from the top side down. The lower bearings will always be solid. You won't have no kind of holes there. So we're gonna take these little half shells and we're gonna lock them all in the top. Our thrust bearing is the one that has two side pieces to keep the crankshaft from walking back and forth in there. This is what holds it. On an LS motor, this is like your grandma's weak ankles. It's right here. Side of this right here, your grandma playing basketball, these are the weak ankles right here. This is part on LS motor that's real critical about, like on Turbo 400, if you have too much line pressure, the side of that crankshaft, the thrust bearing goes here. And so this rides right here. So when the crankshaft's pushing forward on it, it likes to push up against the back side of that bearing. While an LS motor, they're prone to go through and be dry up in there. And what'll happen, it'll eat that bearing up if you get too much pressure pushing against that. So we have to check the thrust to make sure the thrust is in the right area where we want it to be at. Let's go ahead and drop all these shells up in there. Like I said, the ones with holes in it, the holes are the ones that go on the top for these holes for lubrication. This one being the thrust, the notch right there. Zoom in a little closer on that. See the notch right there? That's what that notch is for a locator. So right here, you shove that in on there. Take this in here. If you look, the tang on it is that way. I gotta wash my hands after this, after I get this in here, because my hands are too dirty to be dealing with this. But right now we're going through and we got plastic gauge, so we gotta put all this together and then we gotta clean it all up. And then we can go back through and do our final assembly. Like I said, your tang goes towards the divot there. And your bearings, you should feel when you go in with it, you should feel them they should feel tight as you roll them in. They shouldn't just flop in there. They flop in there, it's gonna spin it. Them are just locators. Those do not hold the bearings in. The bearings actually get held in this way by the press on it. And that's why when it gets hot, like if you spin a bearing, if you're not low on oil, it'll get hot and that will deform and it'll collapse some of the springiness here. And that's when you spin a bearing, it sticks to it. It's not actually the tangs. The tangs do nothing but locate it and put it in the center of the groove. Like I said, I like to make sure we're towards the center on these right here, because you can slide them back and forth and that does make a difference on your measurements. Alright, a good thing. So now I got the crankshaft dropped in here, everything's dry. I don't want no oil on it or nothing because I want a correct reading on this. So I'm gonna put my caps on here, I'm gonna torque it, then I'm gonna pull it back, I'm gonna torque it after I drop a piece of this on here. I'm gonna take a piece of this, and I'm gonna drop it on each one of them, a little piece, so it'll smush that and it'll tell me, and I'll pull the caps back off of it. When I pull the caps back off, I can measure the smush to know if I got the right oil clearances for each one of these holes or whatnot. And then we'll brake clean everything off and we'll go through and take it and clean it good, put it back together once we make sure our clearances are right. All right, so I'm snugging it down with this. I'm not tight torquing them or not, I'm just getting them down there. But if you look, see what I'm saying, how that one's off? So, right here. So that's what I was showing you right here, how this thing right here can move around and back and forth. So this being the thrust, goes that way. So sometimes you gotta take a bar, put a bar on it, and you gotta pull it back so that way it gets back there to where you want it to be at. So it's right there in that area. Like that, right there, see my line straight now. So now I'm gonna take a torque wrench, I'm gonna torque them. And once I torque them, I'm gonna pull everything back apart, check my clearances. If everything's good, we'll lubricate it, clean everything, put it together, and then we'll build into our rods and pistons. I've done all my inside ones. Now I'm working my way out, doing my outside ones. There it is. So you don't want to rotate your crank in this stack, but you want an accurate reading. So if you come here, real close, you can see right here, we are right in the area, right there. So that bearing's gonna be good. Let's check our next one. Pop it up and out. Sometimes you can look right here. If you look, we're right there in the area where we need to be at on it. The biggest part of the smush. So far, so good. Same thing there, if you look. It's hard to show y'all on camera, but we're good on that. So if you look, sorry, I had the gauge upside down. We're kind of in between, about 3.5 there if I had to guess. 0.0035. And then, see, we're not 4, but we're not exactly 3. So we're right there in that area. Dead on where I want to be at. So let's brake clean everything up, lubricate it, start putting it together. So, wash it all out. Now it's time to lubricate it and put it all back. Well, I'm gonna pull the crank out of it. Like this, now that I washed it. And I'm gonna lube the lower bearings. And then I'm gonna go through and set the crank back down in there. Alright, crankshaft spin. So you feel that, Damien? Grab a hold of that, turn it. How's that feel? Smooth. Feels smooth, don't it? Everything's lubed, everything's torqued. We gotta put our perimeter bolts in. And then now we're gonna start putting our rods and pistons in. So we're working on 2, 4, 6, and 8 first. I'm gonna spray some lube in here, penetrating oil, rub it around. Some cylinder walls, get them good and cleaned up, get them wiped down. Might as well go and do the other side. My hand's gonna be dirty before I wash them again.
You done with the dyno?
Yeah.
Lube the crank up too while I'm at it. A little bit like that ain't gonna hurt. Wash my hands. Now I'll start digging through my box. And I'll take my front wheel drives, point them towards the front of the motor, the FWDs, and we'll put them in, each one of them, and we'll make sure, here, I'll show you something. So since we're working on 2, 4, and 6, the rod, the chamfer should come towards the back side of the motor on these cylinders, because this cylinder over here is in front. I'll show y'all that in just a minute after I wash my hands up. So I'm gonna show y'all this. On the rods, the tames are always on the same side. Oh, I'm glad I didn't drop that. I always take my rods and I write number 2 and number 2 right here together, so I know if this rod gets spun around, then it's a no-go. Your writing will all be the same direction on each bank. So side 2, 4, 6, and 8 will all have the writing here. All 1, 3, 5, and 7 will have it. But if you look, this rod has a little edge right here. See this right here? A little chamfer right there on the edge of it. That side don't. The side that don't always goes towards the other rod. This will go towards the outside of the crankshaft. So if you have 2 of these, it'll be like this. It'll be riding like that right there beside each other on the flat edges. The side that has the bevel goes towards the outside of the crankshaft, because the crankshaft has a bevel when they machine it. So what we'll do, I've done my range on here. I'm gonna put my bearings in here. I'm gonna check it. This should all be good because it's standard. We'll lube everything up. We'll knock the rods and pistons in it. And like I said, we'll take these and put these on the same size, which should be facing the outside of the engine. The number 2 should be on that. So, and on the rod bearings here, they don't have no oil holes because the rods are the last thing to get oiled in an LS motor. So it's the very end of the road. So the oil just goes out and bleeds off into the crank and bleeds off onto the crankshaft and then back into the pan. So this is the very end of the road for it. So it does not have oil holes because it lubricates through the center of the crankshaft. Starting with cylinder number 2, I rotate my crankshaft to the bottom here. That way I make sure I don't hit it. And like I said, my bevel will be towards the back side because this cylinder is behind cylinder number 1. So being number 2 here, it's gonna be right there. I'll try and take it and get it down in the hole. Like I said, using this smaller squeezer, it is a little bit tighter, but it will go. Once I get it there, I'll reach up in here and feel for the rod underneath. And I start guiding it down. Like that. Now I'm gonna rotate it to show y'all what I was talking about. See that bevel there and how this crankshaft's beveled? That's why we do it like that. That bevel, if it was flipped around, that crank would drag right here on the edge. It would push these rods together tighter. But because it's right there, it turns around and you always turn them with the bevel outwards. I always like to make sure the rods move back and forth smoothly. If you get one that does not, you have a bent rod or you got something else going on. But this right here should be able to float back and forth pretty easily like that. So there it is, we got it all together. I'm gonna bag it up for later. Got to order the heads for it and get the other motor pulled out and we'll be ready to get this thing together and get it put in.